All right. Thank you very much for attending Worldwide Slot Car Chat number 16. That makes 4 months doing this. I'm Greg Galb, your host, slot car racer for past 10 plus years, analog, digital, with clubs and at home. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. John Kitt from Toronto, Canada. Been building and driving slot cars for quite a while. Have a YouTube channel called Scale Car Garage. Please check it out. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Click that bell. All right, and Mr. Underwood?
Hiya, I'm John from Banbury in the UK. I race, club racer, race at Oxford 4-lane Lincoln, and also at Rockingham, which is a 4-lane wood track. I also do the Disca Oxygen series, so WEC, GT3 type cars. Do a little bit of collecting, but basically I'm I like to race and go as fast as I can.
All right, and Les?
Who, me?
Old slot.
Yeah, I don't know.
And Steve?
Minneapolis, Minnesota, the U.S. I've been racing, building slot cars for, I guess, about 15 years. Have a group that races every Thursday. And that's about the basics of the introduction, I think.
That's all we need. And I might have forgotten to mention I'm in the Seattle area. Looks like Ray's on. He was talking earlier. Ray, you want to say hi? Maybe he's busy. It looks like Mr. Reinecke is on. You want to say hi, Mr. Reinecke?
Hey guys, how are you?
Why aren't you working?
Yeah, go back.
I'm tired of dealing with people and I need a break.
Okay.
Fair enough.
What's your thing?
I don't have a whole lot of topics to go over. Does anybody have any show and tell or questions or anything they want to circle back on? I know, David, it's great that you're here. Did you want to add anything to the resin topic that we were working on last week?
Is John on?
Yep.
Hey, how's it going? Actually, I was just thrilled with getting to see how he does things. It's always interesting to see another caster out there take care of their craft, and just a lot of fun to watch that. So I was really sorry I missed that one. Yeah, John, did we cover off on all of our questions?
I think so. Listen, first of all, thank you for creating the new noun called caster.
I could have used other ones, but I figured that was the cleanest.
That's awesome. Well, listen, at some point, I'd love to see your methodology as well, because there's always something to learn, because your output is just spectacular.
Well, thank you. Sadly, I have actually sold all my equipment, believe it or not, but I do have still my original masters. Well, again, once the business didn't go anywhere after I had to quit for medical, I had all this stuff dragging around. And when we knew we were getting close to moving, I contacted Sean, the guy that trained me, and I'm like, hey, I've got all this equipment. I've got resin. I've got rubber. It's all fairly new. What would, you got anybody in the club that's still looking to get into resin casting? And actually had 2 guys that were. So I actually offloaded all of my equipment, all of my current stock of resins and that kind of thing. And then
do you do tires at all, Dave?
Nope, I do not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I never did tires. I was strictly the resin bodies, the kits, the glass, and then the figures, obviously, for a short period of time. So never did the tires. I actually almost went into the tires and almost went into decal making at one time. And, I found Paul Gage was easy enough and cheap enough to deal with. And it was one less thing I had to deal with. And then with the decals, the guy, Tim, that I used in England was just, there's no way I could have done what he did. It was just spectacular. So, but.
He's lagged off a little bit.
Yeah, he's frozen.
And for those who are unaware, sorry, Dave, you lagged off for a second there. But I was going to mention that the main reason that you stopped and transferred all your business stuff to somebody else is because you developed an allergic reaction.
Yeah, sorry, I hadn't done that. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
I can turn the audio or the video off if that causes the lag. I'm in the shop, so I don't have Wi-Fi out here yet. But you know, watching John do it with pipettes, when you're doing large production, the pipettes work for 1 car at a time, 2 car at a time. I typically would have 4 casting tanks going at any given time. I just had them lined up there. John showed very, very well that you've got a pot life that is pretty short, right? So in order to get everything done, and I was doing an entire body plus the interior plus all the parts per kit at one time in 1 tank. So what would happen was I actually had graduated cups that I would use that were plastic, and I could probably use them about 10, 15 times before the cup would just start getting sticky. And so I'd mix a part A and part B up to a certain measurement. And I kind of, you know, John's probably the same way. After a period of time, you kind of know how much resin to make for a kit or how many parts you're making at that point. So you can kind of eyeball what you need. So I just would mix mine up with a popsicle stick, literally in a cup, pour it into the mold, similar to what John did, swish it around, squish the mold, park it, all the parts and everything back into the tank, and then pressurize it.
Now,
So
what pressure did you generally use, Dave?
Anywhere between 35 and 50, depending on the molds. Some of the molds, so you kind of learn some shortcuts, obviously, right? You kind of start learning faster ways to streamline things, that kind of a thing. One of the things that I learned very early from Sean was you built a mold box, and I can send you my actual instructions, but he built these really elaborate wood boxes that had screen underneath, and it would hold the car a certain way, and they were concave, so the mold would come out. I built about 3 of those, and I'm like, oh, screw this crap. I don't have this much time in my life. Plus, you know, it just was problematic. And I figured if you put a little bit more extra rubber in there, you get a thick enough side that the mold won't kind of spread on you. Well, not entirely true. So what I started using was Scalextric boxes that I either cut down or modify, and I've also got pictures of that. At the end of the day, that works fine for bodies, but I wouldn't reuse the Scalextric lid for that mold. So I would typically never run a mold box, ever. And so over time, as the molds get older, you can see the mold start to spread a bit. It gets worn out because you're pushing that inner plug in and out all that time, right? So, you know, again, you kind of figure out things. So Sean would give me grief that I can't believe you're not using mold boxes. And I'm like, well, I don't have 5 hours to do woodworking, you know, on top of, you know, popping out all these cars. It's problematic enough. So that was kind of a funny thing watching, you know, hearing you talk about mold boxes and that kind of thing. So always fun to see somebody else. But back to Greg's comment. So John and I had talked a little bit about it online, I think. So isocyanides are often part of a resin, a spray foam. There's a number of different glues in the industry. They're in all sorts of things, in cars, manufacturing, whatever. About 25% of the population, near as I can tell from my research, end up at some point becoming sensitized to those isocyanides. And it can.
Ooh, that's pretty sensitive.
You cut out.
Yeah, I think it's not. It's
Hold
too
on.
much. You can probably hear us.
Yeah, I hope you can hear us.
Did I lose you again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're back.
Video is stuck. Yeah, maybe turn off your video and just do audio for a bit. Or not.
You there, Dave?
Might have to go. Go to the Wi-Fi, Dave. Go to the Wi-Fi.
How about?
A little bit.
How about? That's all I heard. Technical issues. Gotta love it.
Geez, and just when it was getting good.
Yeah.
How about now?
We heard how about now? No.
Oh, he's going to try and reassign, sort of get back in, I think.
Did he leave?
Might have left the garage.
Yeah, he's not in the list anymore.
Okay. Wow, this reminds me of trying to get free pay-per-view when you first get cable.
You'll probably go in the house.
I can see an image.
I think I can see him skating. Oh no, it's a commercial. Wow.
We got a few minutes until he comes back, I guess, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he's back. Oh, audio's connecting. Here we go.
So how about now?
We're good.
Perfect.
Here's the deal. I had a stray Wi-Fi signal come in here. My phone tried to flip over and completely did the bed. So sorry about that.
Might turn your video on, man. Back on.
Well, we can try that. So as I was saying, I don't know where I lost you, but
There you are.
so there we go. So isocyanides, heavily prevalent in the industry. I had thought I was dealing with food allergy problems, and here's the reason why. I'd come home from work, I'd pop a few bodies out, go in for dinner, and of course I'm wearing, gloves, goggles, whatever, normal PPE stuff, but no mask because, again, not, as John said, not much smell to these things, right? It's not like the 60s. So I'd go do that, wash up for dinner, eat dinner, and within about 10 minutes of eating dinner, I'd either start getting blisters in my mouth, blisters on my hands. And so in my head, it always dawned on me that it would happen every time I'd eat dinner. And so that could actually bleed over into the next day. Well, it never dawned on me, idiot that I am, that I was actually then after dinner casting through the evening. I'd wake up in the morning, the bumps would subside, the blisters were starting to go away, and we'd rinse and repeat the following day based on orders. So I'd gone in and gotten allergy tested, and they tested me for everything under the sun, and actually none of it came back positive. And so I'm talking to my allergist, and he's an old ex-Navy guy, and he's talking about, I'm looking at this reaction, and he goes, I've seen some interesting things in chemicals, guys working on flight lines around JP4 or, foams that they use for firefighting, whatever. He said, so let's talk about your hobbies. So we talked about hiking and biking and all the stuff, and I got to slot cars, and so we got to talking about it. I said, oh yeah, and I build some cars, and I showed him some stuff. He goes, oh wow, you make that? I'm like, yeah, I make it. He goes, what do you make it out of? I said, well, I do blah, blah, blah. And he goes, do you have the MSDS? And I pull it up, and he goes, there's your problem. What? You didn't test me for this yet. What are you talking about? So they actually did a test, and sure as heck, I'm allergic as all get out to isocyanides now. And so it took a while, obviously, to get me there. The diagnosis actually took about 2 months off, and then just out of the blue one day said, screw it, I'm going to try it again and see what happens. Immediate reaction. Now that I know what it is, it's like, well, okay, that was the final proof. So at that point, dealing with that and knowing that it could cause issues for me, not for everybody else, but for me, having that being that sensitized, if I touch it in raw form, so while either A or B side or liquid, it causes problems. If I breathe dust from sanding it, it causes problems. I can handle a solid body all day long as I don't sand it and as long as I don't touch it in liquid form. I actually was cleaning out the garage as we moved to Florida, and I had some old molds that needed to be redone, but I was destroying them because they were beyond repair. And apparently one of them from, you get some mismixing occasionally, so you kind of get a little bit of a goop or something on one of the molds. I touched it and within seconds had a reaction. So it is what it is. So that's how I got out.
That sucks.
It does, because I was really excited about the latest line I'd been doing. I just released a 70 Monte Carlo, a 73 Laguna. I had a Matador, a Charger, a Cyclone, and a couple of other bodies that were 3D printed already in progress. I had a Birdcage Maserati that was already in resin because I did the 3D version. Vlad has since done a much better version of that 3D model, by the way, for printing. And I think Steve may have built one already. I think you did, Steve, right?
Two of them.
Two of them, yeah, because one's not enough for the average human, of course.
Which now you've kind of transitioned over into the 3D printing realm.
Yep.
Going to steer clear of the resin 3D printing, I imagine. And
I can't play with it for the same reason. There's a lot of argument too when you talk between the printing guys. Resin's better than FM. I don't even care. It's Ford versus Chevy. It's just the issue for me is I can't play with the resins at all, so I don't get that chance. So I'm happy with what I'm doing with FDM. I'm really pleased with the bodies that Vlad's done. For me, back to being just a hobbyist now, I'm enjoying it.
Here's your body. There's your body.
Oh, there
beautiful.
You go.
That's beautiful.
That's just
yeah,
a
and it's
sexy little car.
perfect. I mean, it's correct.
Yep.
I know what you went through to get the rear end correct.
Bob Schleicher at MCR Magazine lives in Colorado, and I'd get together with Bob every couple of years and, send him articles for the magazine and had a couple of tracks in there and cars as I'd release them. He had been bugging me for a Maserati forever, and he showed up at my house for a club race couple of years ago with this huge coffee table book on Maseratis, and it's virtually every chassis ever made and different pictures of each of the cars as they went through life. Bob hands me 4 bodies, including a Lancer, a Dubro, an old Resilient Resins, and a Marks body, and hands it to me, and he says, listen to me, I'm going to give you all this right now, but I want a Maserati before I die. Can you make one, please? That was literally his comment to me, and I'm like, well, how do you say no to that? So I got the 3D and started working on it, and had just gotten it into resin for the first back casting of the 3D part, and had started sanding on that in and around that time. But I, prior to that, tried to do it by hand. That car has got demonically bad curvage that just causes all sorts of problems when you're trying to do it by hand. It's hard.
Came out great.
Oh, it looks great. I love the 3D stuff.
Are you guys printing
So,
pretty thin layer heights, like 0.07, 0.05, 0.06, that kind of stuff?
Yes.
yep.
Yeah.
They're basically ended up now, they're a little thinner than slotted scum even. They weigh less. So that's been kind of the goal. Now and then you have to maybe do some glue on the inside to strengthen, just to paint it basically with glue, just to strengthen the side a little bit, but that's about it. Never had one break, and we race them hard. You know, just finished this Lola. This Lola, if you can see it, is super thin, super light. It's running on my track 0.2 of a second slower than a Thunder slot. Well, that's pretty good.
It is
That's
good.
pretty good. You know, they're all sidewinders.
By the way, I'm gonna caveat your statement, Steve. The only reason you haven't broken one is I've not shown up at your house yet this year.
That's true. Yeah, that would be true.
Well, you must race hard because you got the medevac helicopter right behind you over your shoulder there.
Oh, you can see it
Yeah.
on the track? Oh, I'll be darned. It's
awesome.
actually a TV helicopter. There's cameras all bristling all over it. That's really, yeah, the track's right there.
Oh, well, how about a tour?
Oh my God. I could show it to you.
While Steve's going to show us that, I will say that myself and a guy that races in his club, Steve Stone, have actually managed to kill about 40 in one shot on this track.
Oh.
During an accident.
Let's see. What's the way? How do I change cameras on this? Right there.
So who gets the ceremonial Jody Scheckter helmet after something like that?
Let me get the camera straightened out.
I was just happy that Steve didn't throw me out of his house. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, and watch it there, John. I'm listening to you.
Yeah, there's the long view.
Nice.
Very nice.
What's the
So
total
it's
size
140 feet now.
of lap length? What about the table size?
30 feet to the end of the wall down there for the straightaway. Straightaway is 25 feet.
Nice.
And most of it's 4 feet wide. I mean, I do that so when I worked on it, I could reach it all. I'll just kind of show you.
I love the scenery. I love the vignettes.
There's the go-kart track. Well, they had one at Elkhart, so it seemed like an idea.
Awesome.
Let's see. Go gurney. Then you get into the pits. This is something I wish was turned on for you. Any of you guys have an old phone? That screen has an iPhone in it, and you just connect it and turn on YouTube, and you got it like a big projection screen. All the people are 3D printed. There's about, I think, 500 of them.
Now, did you paint them all yourself?
Yes.
Well done. Very well done.
You know, there's the pit area. Let's see what else. Oh, I was going to show you one thing. There's where Dave went off the track. There's Dave's tombstone. That's where he left the track.
In my defense, it was the first time I'd ever been there, I think.
Yeah, but it wasn't the first lap.
I think the first lap was just as ugly elsewhere.
Let's see. Then the hard thing to kind of see here is the hill section. It goes up and does a hill switchback. I don't know how well you can see this.
Oh, it's great.
Is it sport, Steve? It's painted.
Pardon?
Sport track.
It's Carrera.
Oh, Carrera.
Yeah, it's all
You painted
Carrera.
it and do you run urethanes on it or?
Quick slicks on all the fast classes and urethanes on the others.
So Steve, did you at least make the headstone out of resin so he could rotate it?
No, I did. I just bought it at a.
Hey, I'm allergic to that. Stop it.
Yeah, don't worry. Resin things.
And there's a section over here. You haven't seen this section, Dave.
So
Ah, I
what have
see
you
fresh
got
meat.
Yeah.
So what have you got as power, Steve?
There's two of those tattoo-oriented transformers, but everybody talks about they only have 2 amps. It isn't true. They got 15 each. So they're down here where we can reach them. With every class, there's always a faster lane on every track, no matter what. But one's always quicker. So we adjust. We have an adjustment. Like if one's red lane's at 12 volts, let's say with group C, then we'll be running white lane will run at 12.3. So we have 12 classes, and we kind of figured out that for all of them. So that's the main reason we have 2. Used to have them adjustable because of the grandkids, but grandkids are teenagers now, and they're better than the rest of us, with those reflexes. So that's it, guys.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
That's not it. So what he's not telling you is what's really cool with the way they race. He mentioned the breakouts and that kind of a thing. First off, when I got up there the first time and they showed me how they do that, I was absolutely mesmerized. But the other part of it is, nice knees, Steve, by the way.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm saying flip your camera around so we don't have to look at your knees. That's what I was saying.
I'm trying. Okay.
But there he is. But the cool part is they used fuel stops. And I had
for the handicap.
With a handicap. And so I had never done that before. And it's what made me go out and download Race Coordinator to use, because the fuel added something I had never seen anybody do successfully before. And I literally walked out of Steve's house the first time going, oh my God, I got to go do this. This is the most fun I've ever had.
Well, it came about because, like so many groups, we've had as many as 12 in the group, and then 8. Now, we really are down to a good constant 6 now. I mean, that's what we have. But there's always, again, a couple of guys that are fast. We have one guy that simply loves to tune cars. That's the niche of the hobby he likes. And he's also a tremendous driver. And I did pretty well. And so we figured out after a couple of years that we were finishing first or second, and the other guys were, it wasn't working out that way. And that wasn't really fun for anybody. So we said, let's try to develop a handicap system. So we did. We spent a long time on it. And we came around to using the time you spend in a fuel stop. Our races are 20 laps long. And so we all qualify at the beginning of the night with whatever car we're going to use for that class. And then based on that time, every 10th difference from the fastest lap of the night gets 2 seconds penalized. The fast guy ends up with 2 seconds penalized per 10th. And it works out bluntly perfect. In other words, if I qualified at 12.2 and somebody qualified at 12.4, I would be giving them 4 seconds. So I would sit there for 14 seconds. They'd stay there for our base of 10. And that's how the handicap system works.
Do you ever get anybody sandbagging or no?
No, because we have a breakout. So your qualifying time, say, is 12. We use 3/10. So 12s, 11.9, 11.8, 11.7. If we see an 11.6, you lost the race. And
wow.
That's how we do it. That's how we do it. And it changed everything. So everybody literally can win. It's everybody, Yes, if you're quicker and an excellent driver, which it now comes down to more than anything, you'll probably win more. But it's not just go out and buy or build or bring a hot car and that's going to be the end of the night. It doesn't work that way anymore. And this is not an easy track. It's got a great flow, and you develop great muscle memory on it, which usually is the measure of great flow. That just sets in. But it's, a 25-foot straight, 12-foot straight, 2 6-foot straights, and then corners. I mean, that's pretty good. You know,
Yeah, well, it looks like you've got quite a technical area there too with the switchback.
That's fun. And climbing up there, it's a rise of 2.5 feet. You know, so it
Oh,
goes
so
up.
you're doing elevation as well then?
Yeah, that switchback goes up about 1.5 feet and then runs and then goes up another foot from there and then finally dives back down.
Do you run it in both directions or just one?
We rarely go the other direction, but yeah, there's switches there to do it.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's switches there. So,
And the fun part with that, though, to Steve's point also with the breakouts is the fuel, though, because it's happened when you get a bad driver like myself, or you're in the heat of a battle side by side with a guy and you're supposed to pit, you overblow the light and it's like, crap, now I got to come back around. I'm now out of fuel, so I don't get my lap counted. It really changes the dynamic of those pit stops.
strategy gets to be a big deal. You know, it really does. You know, when to take it, how much to take when, etc. You know, yeah, it changed everything. You know, it changed from go fast to think about it while you're doing this also, you know. You're not a bad driver, Dave, by the way. You know, don't let him
Yes,
take
I am the worst driver.
Oh, God.
He still lets me drive his cars. I have no idea why after all these years, but
I have a lot of glue.
true. And actually, that's actually true. He has had to glue stuff back together when I'm done with it. So sorry.
Yeah,
Steve.
yeah. Here,
Still love you.
Take my shadow for a drive. He did.
Well, having driven other people's racing cars, that's what you do, man.
That's what you do. That's part of the deal, you know. So that's it. Thanks, you guys, for letting me show it.
That's a great
That's
look.
an awesome track.
Yeah, very nice.
I'm definitely a big fan of fuel. I mean, I'm a big digital guy, so all those strategy stuff definitely comes in with digital. But when the analog club, every once in a while, will run a race on a track where they like to have fuel stops, and yeah, you got to park right under the light, or in this case, usually when we run that kind of race, it's if you run out of fuel, you lose power. So you got to make sure you don't overshoot the pit stop such that you're going to run out of fuel by doing so, and because then you're just dead on the track. Can't do that with obviously, but with the analog,
you just lose the lap. But you know, the average lap in this track is 12.5 seconds. You know, so you know, you lose a fair amount of time if you blow it. You know.
So, Steve, is that just a piece of software you put into your race management system, or?
No, we use one that hardly anybody's ever heard of. I don't know why. It's called Slot Track. It's made by a guy in Wisconsin. It's been around for 10 years. It was made originally for the little AFX cars. I mean, he holds events, big events. I mean, guys from all over the country come and race in it every year. But anyway, I'll skip all that story. Slot Track works 4, 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8 lanes. It doesn't matter. And it is marvelous. There's a whole bunch of other things we do with it. The software is so sophisticated, and we've altered the software also, by the way, here and there. But it's free. And it's fantastic. I mean, I can't say enough about it. It's on all of the tracks up here. The guys that race here, they all have tracks. And there's been maybe another 3 or 4 tracks I know about in town. And you use it once, I mean, it's just flawless. It is. I can't say enough about it. And it's free, right?
So I was going to say, are you using Photocells for timing, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a top light source, photocell underneath. Yeah. I don't like trying to align them on top and bottom. I went down that road. And so it's just a light up there on top. But yeah, it's just couldn't be simpler. I mean, you install the software, you plug it into your serial port, and you're done, you know.
And what are you running it on, like a Windows 10, or what's the OS?
Oldest computer I've got around, I think this, you know, God, I don't know what that one is. It's 10, 9, 8, 7. I don't know. It could be Vista. It doesn't matter. I mean, they don't use, you know, doesn't take any space. It doesn't have any, you know, there's nothing needed. You don't need a powerful computer for these timing systems.
Where do we find out about it?
Yeah.
How did I find it? When I
Or
got
where?
going,
Where can we find some?
it's on the internet. SLOTRAC.
Okay,
Google slot track. See if it shows up.
I'm trying to do that.
Sure. Slot track.
SLOTRAC.
I believe that's right. I'll go look if I'm wrong. Slot track timing system.
All right, let's see if I can see something here.
There's a lot of stuff out there, and I encourage everybody who's watching to explore other options. I mean, even with digital, there's half a dozen race management programs, and for analog, another dozen.
Yeah, I can't find it, Steve.
Have different.
You can't find it?
No.
Yeah, I'll go look here in a minute. I'll get it. Slot track will run digital also. Let me go find it for you. Hang on a sec.
Now I'm even more curious.
It's actually a good system, Dennis.
I got it. It's SLOT track with a K.
Yeah.
Two T's in the middle and K at the end.
Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah, we got it now, Steve. Two T's in the middle and K at the end. No C.
Download it right away because he's not going to keep it up much longer. That I know.
Okay.
And then also,
is 16.01.
Yeah, that's his final version.
Yeah.
And also, you'll see on the website, I think it's in the top right, sound files. Grab all of the 3 sound files. Only one of them works right with it. And I can tell you which one, but get all those into your computer if you want it, and then you can take it from there.
Okay, thank you.
Mini Grid's commercial track has been using that timing system now for about, 6 or 7 years, Dennis, and with 0 issues at all.
Okay.
Good.
I'm always just interested in any of these things because I run TrackMate on my track, but then at the commercial raceway we have the old SRT system on one track and we have Lapmaster on another track, and there's always somebody wanting to know something about these things. So it's always good to know about any other version of it.
Yeah.
If you got
software.
If you got TrackMate going, if you download this, you're done. Same connection. It'll be the same connections.
Okay.
Everything will work.
And then I can try one versus the other. That'll be good. Thank you.
Sure.
So this is Dave again. I'm actually purchasing TrackMate this month for the very first time. I was using a very old version of, I can't even remember what it was years ago when I got back into the hobby in HO back in the late 90s. There was this online racing series that a guy had started. Does anybody remember that? Well, anyway, I found a lapped PC timing system out of the UK, and the guy's been long defunct, but it was a nice parallel cable setup with the infrareds. And when I did the first version of PDR, the first 2 actually, I had enough ambient light. I did not have to run a gantry, which I really loved. But the last 2 houses, it hasn't worked out. I've had to build a gantry. But I made the mistake when we moved. I left the cable on the bottom of the track, and it was all glued and taped and perfectly set up and wire wrapped nicely and everything. And unfortunately, didn't think that one through, and the movers tore it off when they were bringing it out of the house. So I'm going to end up buying a full TrackMate system, I think, this time, and just kind of get it into the 21st century with USB.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. It works very well, and it's for some of us that are technically challenged when it comes to electronics and computers, it's really plug and play. So it's got a lot of good features.
And I'm glad to hear that, Dennis. Everybody else has said the same thing. I will admit, though, I am going to immediately stick Race Coordinator back on it because that's what I've been using after Steve's. But the hardware side of it, TrackMate does a swell job. And so
very
instead of me attempting to rewire and solder and all that nonsense, I'm just going to go ahead and get a tried and true, very well proven system.
And are you going to use a light bridge, or are you going to use a dead strip? Or
I'm going to actually stick
switches?
with a light bridge.
Okay.
What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to change it. I'll leave the start finish on the front straight of the PDR. I'm going to, however, build in the champion bridge on the back straight, and that's actually going to run the timing setup. I just thought that'd be kind of something fun and different to do. I've never been a fan of the gantry on my front straight, just me, because scenic-wise, it just didn't look right on my track, but it was the only thing I could do once I had to run a gantry. So I figured another scenic opportunity, and I'll 3D print a footbridge that'll work as the champion.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm
Truckmate,
looking at
truckmate Dan used to race with us. He's in Vancouver.
Very cool.
I'm looking at the release notes for Slot Track, and it looks like back in version 13, he removed Scalextric digital support, and I don't see any other mention of digital on the release page. Do you know what digital it supports?
I haven't looked at it for years, I have to tell you.
Yeah, it looks like he got rid of digital support, because when I look at his hardware page, it's all analog hardware, no mention of any of the digital bases.
That must have been what I saw, because I don't know it any further than that.
I probably would have heard of it if it did support Scalextric digital, but
Sure.
But some of the guys in my club have this kind of hardware, so I might, let them know about this so they can check it out. That's pretty cool.
So I imagine it's very hardware specific, though. I guess it'll only work with a photocell system, or?
No, it doesn't care what trips it.
Yeah, it's if you look at his hardware page, fidgets, infrared sensor cable, TrackMate. And he's got installation guides and pictures and everything, and a schematic, and just to kind of help. But most software is, once you have something telling the computer, trigger signals, then that's all software cares about, as long as it gets something that it understands.
Yeah,
it was.
Sorry, I was going to say
it was $100. It was $100 up until about 6 months ago. Then he made it free, and I think it's got a short life cycle coming.
Yep, that happens.
Yep. Just download it on a memory stick, and then you got it to play with.
Yeah, I already downloaded it just in case, so
sure.
It's not accessible at some point in the future. I'll be able to say, yeah, I got a copy of that. Anybody asks for it. Dave was mentioning Race Manager. I've played with that a little bit. The reason I'm saying the variety of software out there and that people should try different things is because not only do they have different features and support different hardware, but also, and primarily, they all have their own way of doing the user interface. And so Race Coordinator is basically, there's multiple versions of Race Coordinator. There's the Race Coordinator, which is the analog version. Then he's got a Scalextric digital one called Race Coordinator Digital. And the Scorpius wireless system uses a Scorpius, themed Race Coordinator Digital, essentially, for Scorpius. But it's the way that he structures everything, from how the screen setup is to how you go through the settings and things like that, is completely different from every other program that I've tried for various systems. And so some people, I've seen a lot of people post online saying, I don't understand how to use this system. I can't, get my head around blah, 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 or whatever. And I'm like, well, try another application. If Race Coordinator isn't working out for you, try Track, try Slot Track, try all, try PT Lap Counter. There's lots of options. If it's not clicking for you, try something else, and you'll probably find something that does click for you. And most of them are going to have at least the basics of, lap counting and timing and series and rotations and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. People is like, try different things, and you might find something that you like better than the thing you've been using, just because the thing you've been using is the thing you've been using.
Slot Track is pretty handy. When we do the qualifying, we enter those times into the computer under each person's name. So like 7 o'clock, we practice cars. At 7:30, we qualify. We then basically go to the program we're using, it's got a full rotation built into it for the 20-lap races, and it does all the pairings, so you get to run in red. Then you run everybody in red, and you run everybody in white. We just hit go, and that's it for the night. We don't touch the computer. It just keeps going with 60 seconds in between races, and it runs continuously till 9:30 or 10, and that's it. I mean, it's totally just keeps chugging away. I mean, it's, that's pretty neat.
So the only thing you have to do, Steve, is pay attention.
It's true. I mean, once you hit that go button, it controls the entire night. Keeps track of the handicap, keeps track of who won, keeps track of the points, prints them out afterwards if you want them. That's how we do it.
Wow. So I guess it's like a round robin for, do you know what's the maximum?
Well, it's a rotation. It sets up pairs. It starts off with for fastest handicapper races, the second fastest.
Oh, so it actually takes the time into consideration. It's not just a random.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. So it starts pairing like that, but then the next set of pairings, you're going to eventually, everybody will race everybody in both the red and the white lane. I mean, eventually that's where it'll end up. So you get 6 people and you're running a lot of races, when you figure you're going to run, well, each person, you're going to run two races with everybody, the 6, so you're going to run yourself, you're going to run 12 races, you do the math.
Yeah, what is that, 36, I think?
Yeah, I get that screwed up, but everybody runs everybody in both lanes, and it just keeps going through the rotation, It announces it, and then it announces who's on deck, audio, so it'll say Steve and Mike, are up. Paul will be next. Paul, so it tells you what's going on, and it tells you the timing, 10 seconds to the start, things like that come out all, it talks to you all the time. You're low on fuel. It tells you that when you're 25% left on fuel. Tells you when you had the fastest lap, tells you when you timed out, because we have a 3-second breakout. Brian breaks out. Well, now we know Brian's lost that race, and so on and so on, So
that sounds very cool.
It is cool. It is.
It's similar to what we do with our bracket racing.
Sure.
It lets you use every car that you own. You don't have to run your fastest car all the time.
Exactly. That was one of the also main reasons for the handicap thing, was we could bring all these cars off the shelf. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Every class you had your fast car. Group C cars, I've probably got 30 of them or something like that. 1 or 2 are the quickest. And that's the ones you raced, because that's how it was. Now it doesn't matter. They're all within 5/10 of each other, but yeah, it's drawn out all kinds of cars off the shelf. So that's been spectacular. That's been wonderful.
Yeah.
So Luft, do you use it as well?
Pardon me?
No,
do you use the same system that Steve uses for timing?
No, we've got our own.
Oh,
but it sounds like it works about the same.
Similar, yeah. There's no gas, but we run shorter races. We run 4 or 5 short races in each lane before you move over, and then you can adjust your breakout time after every race.
Okay.
And then it's just the computer staggers the start. So if everybody drives close to their breakout time, you get a photo finish every time.
Yep.
Is that program available for people to download somewhere, Luff?
You need all the hardware, the wiring.
What's it called?
The program is just a real small part of it. It's all the cabling that you need to run. If you break out, it cuts the power to your lane.
Sure, you gotta have some power management, stop and go boxes or whatever. Is that?
I'll get you in touch with the guy that does it.
Does he doesn't have a business name or anything?
No, he's one of the guys in the club.
Ah,
and he did all the little circuit boards and the whole bit. I'll email you.
okay, yeah, and we'll see if maybe we can get him on for a chat.
There's guys in our club that have 600 cars, and they run all of them now. And you can win with any car. It doesn't matter how fast or slow it is.
Yeah, that's big. Don't misunderstand me though. We're not hardcore. Well, as Dave can tell you, also he's been here. We're not hardcore racers. I mean,
No.
it does all that, but how do I
One
word
of our-
it? It's not that
one of our-
intense,
One of our guys built a Isetta, little, the BMW Isetta
Sure.
in 132 scale. And it's just hilarious to see it run around the track. And he's about probably 3 seconds off the time.
Uh-huh.
But, you got to work hard to catch him before the end of the race.
To Steve's point, I always called it gentleman racing. They race in a format that I just not witnessed at a club level before. And again, to me, you could tell the guys, it was all about the joy of driving, not the joy of winning at all costs. And I think that was the number one thing that made me come back time and time again.
Yeah.
So it sounds, Steve, like you've got a really good group of guys then.
We really do. It's really, really lucky, I mean, a lot of guys have come through here, and I mean, everybody that's had bunches of guys know exactly what I'm talking about. And you'll have guys show up that, just aren't going to fit in well with that group, or it just doesn't mesh. And other guys show up and you go, God, this is perfect. We got 6 guys. I mean, it's
The beauty of your system is that there's no real rules. There's nothing to argue about.
I'm missing that.
I think he was basically saying that there's nothing for the guys to really argue about as far as tweaking a car against a rule or trying to cheating. There's really no cheating to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There isn't. Not with the breakout.
No.
Well, you've removed the reason to cheat, which is, I think, what always destroys every club, right?
Okay. Now you can certainly win without cheating. And if you want to cheat, what does that get you? But a faster car. And you do a faster car, and you're gonna have a big handicap.
Well, we have we can control the voltage on each lane, so if
We
you
do
want to go
too.
faster, you just turn it up a bit.
Well, that's what I was trying to say earlier. We have a different voltage setups. 12 is our base for the red lane. That's a constant, and it's the quickest lane. It's a little easier to drive. It's about 1.5 feet shorter, but it's easier to drive. So we have a voltage adjustment now for the Fly Classics class and the C's and the Can-Ams and so on, to even them out, and that helps too,
Yeah.
So I have a track-related question for Luff, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes.
So all of your builds over the years have always had copper tape. Is that correct?
Yep.
So have you noticed any issues, heat or cold, either way?
It tends to buckle up a little bit in hot weather, and then it flattens out again when it cools off. But
Okay.
it doesn't tear.
I'm currently actually peeling the tape off the PDR right now, not for the reasons that I'm asking. I'm actually planning on going back with tape because the garage is cooled now. And yeah, I can get it up to, some temps in here, but this track sat out here disassembled and the tape did not lift at all. I mean, there's a couple of little places where it might have buckled, a tiny ripple somewhere, but really it's few and far between. So I was shocked at 120 degrees that it did okay. I'm actually doing it because the joints on the table, when I built this one, I purposely did joints after my last disaster with Durham's wood putty in between the track. It just destroyed the track. So this time I do have some gaps, and I need, I've got screws in between the lanes to try to get the road surface even and stuff. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of sanding on the joints. So I thought what I'd do is go ahead and retape it so I don't have, 10 taps or 10 splices per lane. But essentially just, so that'll allow me to refix the joints correctly, and I'll touch up the paint there and all that, but to get that smoothed out and then retape. I don't think I need to pull the tape leaves a little bit of a sticky residue, but I don't think that's a problem. Do you?
No. The biggest thing is burnishing the tape.
Yep.
And solder every break, every joint.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Usually when you lay the tape and if it breaks on you, you just overlap it an inch or so and carry on. But you'll never find that spot again unless you mark it. We put a piece of masking tape where the break is so we can do the soldering afterwards.
Well, and I probably would have gone with that, except for the fact that, like I said, I've got 1, 2, 3 major joints, and it crosses all the lanes in multiple places. Yeah. So I figured instead of not tapping, but like I said, splicing each of those, since I do want to fix the joints to make them smooth and take care of the screw heads and that kind of stuff, I just figured I might as well retape the track. So certainly cheaper than braid.
Get one of those tape laying tools.
I have yours.
Oh, okay.
So yes, that will be employed yet again. That does work fabulous.
Did you notice how well it works around small or tight corners?
Yes. Yeah. Love that thing.
That was one of my questions, Dave. I'm thinking of copper taping this track. I mean, it's been a long time, sitting here, and it's all plastered in and so on. I'm not going to rip it up, but and there are some tight turns. The inside turns, I think I have 4 of them, they're the tight ones. So that little tool won't have a problem going around there?
No.
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah, and Steve, you and I had talked years ago, I think. I'd copper taped my Scaly Sport before I routed, and it made a massive difference in the Scaly itself. And I just used the Venture that's got the adhesive with the conductive properties or whatever they call it. I can't remember if it's the red or the purple, or I'll have to go back and look at which one I have. But
what was the massive difference? Just the
power,
constant
continuity.
Yeah.
The color coding on the red or purple, whatever, it's the thickness of the tape. It's got nothing to do with the adhesive.
Okay. I thought the color was that, but you're right. It is the mill thickness on the tape. I'd forgotten that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
We use 1 mil, the thinnest one.
Yep. And that's what I put on this track the last time, and it held up very well.
Oh yeah. If you go thicker, the tires can catch on the edge of the copper, in corners, and it'll end up rolling up the tape after a while.
Well, and the issue that I've got is I've driven on some braided tracks, which are phenomenal because they're even better yet from a power kind of, conduction or whatever you call that, I guess. But I've had problems where maybe they didn't do such a hot job in a corner and whatever happened. And so sliding the car sideways, you catch the difference in height with the braid and flip the car. And now, again, that's my normal driving style, but it's kind of problematic in a track scene. And Steve, my issue with Scaly Sport is I started after, a couple of years of having the original PDR done and all my plaster and everything down, I started having problems between joints of the track. And so I bought a circuit pen and had started fixing it, and it just never solved it. So putting copper tape down over it really made a huge difference for me.
Well, Dave, that's the same thing here. I mean, the weather in Minnesota, if humidity is, so up and down between winter and summer.
Yep.
And
the track flexes.
Correct. And you can visibly see it. I mean,
it'll buckle on you.
Yeah, you'll have a tight joint and you'll look at it, next time of year, winter time, and the damn thing's opened up, or the other way around. And that's happened now. This has been laid down, I suppose, in this configuration for 6 years at least, some of it no longer. I'm forever doing just what you said, taking out the voltmeter and working on joints, when a section goes slow.
You find that
Sure.
If you tape your track, Steve, all your issues will go away.
Until the tape breaks.
Perfect. Perfect.
And the second issue in terms of radius, even the inside of an R1 Carrera corner in slot track terms is not that tight a radius. So
Good to hear.
It'll be a snap putting that down.
Good to hear.
To Luff's point, depends how fastidious you want to be. If you do notice, because Carrera rails are slightly raised, they're not recessed onto the track surface.
Yep.
So you run the risk of you have an exposed edge on the tape, right? That's proud of the track.
Okay.
If you really want to be, if you got a whole bunch of time on your hands and you just, want to go and play on your track, just get some clear paint and run it along the edge of the track on the edge of the tape rail.
And I would
I don't understand.
Okay, where you've got tape sitting there, and it's going to be a couple of thou proud of the rail.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
And it is suspect for a tire going laterally across the track to roll.
I got it. Okay.
So seal the edges with a thin paintbrush with some clear paint. It's a paint class. It's a lot of work, but you'll be fine.
I see it.
And if you make an error, the braid will rub that paint off on the surface of the tape in nanoseconds. So,
Boy, this would be a pain in the ass job.
Oh, there's no question.
You're retired. What are you complaining about?
I'm not only retired.
You've already painted 500 resin figures. So don't talk to me about time.
I got
the other
time
thing.
no.
It's the stamina. That's what he's saying.
There you go.
Steve, on your track, do you have power taps on your track as well?
6 of them.
Okay, so you'd still need power taps, even with the copper tape, right?
No, you don't.
The standard, if the British Slot Car Racing Association, which runs a ton of tape tracks and substantially hotter motors than anything we run here, their standard is 140-foot lap length for tape without power taps. Anything
You're kidding.
You'll need power taps.
Wow.
I mean,
so
you've got 100 feet, so you've got roughly 100 joins in your track. So each join, roughly, maybe you have a few more, a few less, but roughly, each join reduces the voltage and the current just a tiny little bit. So spend $20 on some half-decent tape, use Luff's tool, burnish it down with the outside of a big plastic lighter or whatever you want to use to rub it down, and you will think you've already painted your Carrera track, so you've got wood track grip. Now you'll have wood track power. It'll just be a little bit noisier than a wood track, but this will be the greatest thing you've ever done.
Wow. And the braids on the pickup guides will last 3 times as long.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, now I'm interested. Now I'm interested in doing it. So where do we get this tool?
What you should do, Steve?
I'm listening.
Before you lay your track, before you lay the braid, before you lay your tape, just run your finger in the direction of travel, since you said you only go one way. And if you find any little burrs or any big elevation changes rail to rail as you go piece to piece, you might want to get a file and just tape that down a little bit.
Sure.
It's not going to matter for conductivity because you're completely bypassing the stainless steel rails. And that'll make, you'll get rid of a little bit of the click, click, click. And as Luff said, your braids only wear out, not from sliding in the middle of a track section. They wear out on every joint where there's a mislevel and the threads grab the braid. And,
sure.
all kinds of issues. So you can do this in 10 minutes or you can do this in 20 hours, and it depends how
Well, and to Chris's point, when I did the PDR, I had probably put a couple billion miles on the track before I taped it. And I did at the time, thank God Scaly was always giving you 2 guides. I'd probably replaced more guides and braid on those Camaros and Mustangs than I ever had in my life, or could think of doing it again. The minute I taped it, and then conversely going to a routed track with tape, I can honestly not even recall the last time I replaced a guide plug, unless I was tuning a car or making a 3D or whatever the case is. Just it doesn't happen.
The other thing is, on just about most of my tracks are usually around 90 feet. I only use 1 power tap.
But I can leave all the power taps in place, can't I?
Sure you can.
Sure. But I like having just the one, because if there is a break, right away where
it is.
Sure. Not where it is,
Yep.
but there's a break, and it's pretty easy to find.
Okay.
The other thing too is you're going to suddenly realize you're turning the voltage down. That was the other byproduct of this.
Oh.
I, was running at a higher voltage because I wasn't getting the power around the track.
Oh yeah.
As soon as I went to copper, I was like, dear God, I'm turning it down like 2-3 volts, depending on what I'm doing and what I'm running, because the power difference was substantial. That was my experience. Your mileage may vary.
Plus, you got rid of all the clicking over the joints.
Yep. No more Aurora model motoring sounds, right?
It's better in all respects, Steve, and you'll find your motors will run a little bit cooler and last a little bit longer because the tape will pass current, which is much more important than voltage around the track, a lot easier and a lot better. So, everything will work better.
All right.
Well,
And on that note, it is 3 o'clock and I have to go join another meeting, gentlemen. So I apologize, but thank you for letting me be here today.
Thanks for coming, Dave.
Thanks for
Thanks,
coming,
guys.
Dave.
We'll talk to you next time, hopefully. See ya.
Hi.
Bye-bye.
So there's a lot of favorable commentary on copper taping a plastic track. I'm going to offer the alternative. I investigated that early on in my slot racing, 10 years ago. I saw a lot of posts about people copper taping their track. And I was like, oh my God, that's the best idea ever. I'm totally going to do that. In my procrastination, I continued to read people's experience with having taped their plastic track, which had all of the benefits that you guys are going over. Just can't argue against any of those. However, in some of their climates, like Steve was mentioning, the track expands and contracts, and you were talking about visible gaps. In the summertime, the track has expanded. There's no gaps. In the wintertime, the track is contracted. There's gaps. If you tape your track while there's gaps, then you're going to have little buckle spots at every joint when it's warm. If you tape the track while it's warm, the tape is going to break when the track contracts. You can probably do it like in the fall or in the spring or something, and maybe it won't be so bad. But I saw enough people post about broken tape and having to go back and lay more tape, buying the special conductive adhesive tape so that they don't have to pinprick through the layers of tape or cut through the layers of tape to get the copper to touch copper rather than copper touching non-conductive adhesive and things like that. And so I said, well, geez, I don't want to have to go through that every year or two. Not to mention the cleanup. If you ever decide to take the tape off for good, chances are you've got adhesive residue on all of the rails all over your track that you've then got to goof off or goo gone or whatever to get that crap off of there. And I'm like, well, what other solutions are there? Well, we all know about power taps, and we know with Scalextric Sport you got to push down the tabs underneath because they spread out and whatnot. And I had done all that, and the guys in my club, most of their tracks are Scalextric Sport tracks. They've got a few power taps. They made sure the tabs were nice and tight when they put the track together. But over the years, you can feel the loss of power. You're going down the main straight where the power tap is, and you got all the power you want. And then you're on the infield where there's no power tap, and you're wishing there was more power. So I decided that I would bite the bullet and do the unthinkable. I soldered little jumpers between every single join on my track underneath.
Oh my God.
It was a lot of work, but just like you guys are talking about, endless amounts of power, never any power loss. And in this case, never any broken tape or having to patch any tape anywhere or tape residue anywhere. My track is only like 55 feet. I killed overly multiple times. This was so much overkill, it's not even funny. I have 9 power taps. The track is divided into 9 sections. Each piece of track in those sections is connected and then soldered, little wire solder jumpers between every, so 4 little wires, 8 little solder spots per connection. It took a while, and I've got, I think the little jumper wires are like 20 gauge or 22 gauge or something, not heavy wire, because I knew they didn't have to carry a lot. And then my power taps are 14 gauge because I found some 4-conductor in-wall speaker wire that was just super convenient because I'm only got a 2-lane track. So that's where my power comes from. Now, most people aren't running wing cars on their sport track, but I can run a wing car on this track because there is absolutely no power loss anywhere ever, which is important in analog, but vital in digital, because you might have 6 cars in the same 2 pieces of track using all that power right there. So if you don't have consistent power everywhere on your track, able to push all the amps you want, then you're gonna not be a happy digital racer. So all of the benefits of copper tape, except the one which has braid wear reduction, I have all those benefits. I have not noticed extreme braid wear, but I also race primarily on other sport tracks, so braid wear is just kind of a normal thing to me. The noise is not as clicky-clacky as people make it out to be. I hear the motors a whole lot more than I hear clicky-clacky from various things. So I'm quite happy with what I did, and this was done 6 or 7 years ago now, and just as solid power as it was when I first did it, and I expect it to be exactly the solid power for another decade or 2. Now, I didn't do this until after I was 100% sure that I was not going to change the layout anytime soon. And it's nice to have a lot of tracks that you can go to, so you don't have that desire to change your layout like most people do. They don't race in clubs, but I race on a dozen tracks throughout the years, so I don't feel the need to change my layout. So I was confident that I could do this work and enjoy the benefits. And honestly, I'll say that it was worth it. Now I don't so I can't make it right.
Only a mere 800 solder joints for you, Steve.
Track's 140 feet. I mean,
right. Well, you got 800 solder joints after you lift the track up.
Go ahead and do the tape.
Go nuts, have fun.
And in a few years, when you've got broken joins at all those spots where the track's separated, let us know.
Wow.
And on top of it, it's 800 solder joints on Carrera stainless steel rails.
Yeah,
I know.
That's one thing to consider, is how hard soldering is to stainless steel. So
pretty tough.
maybe if you got a
I remember I made a 2-lane Carrera track when I first came back into slot racing in 2004, and I gave up on trying to solder those things. I just made some little wire jumpers that I jammed in underneath, because I connected pretty much every piece of track to every other piece of track, like Greg was saying. And I just made some short pieces of wire that I forced into the slots underneath, or into the way that the rail is formed. I forced them in underneath.
And I've done that too.
The rail and the insulation rail, Dennis, yeah?
Say again?
So where you've got the plastic insulator rail, obviously where your guide goes, it's a common thing we do with Inco tracks, is because you've got the little, you've got your guide slot, and obviously you've got the rails either side.
Yes.
So you've got some thin gauge copper wire and a very fine, like a jeweler's flathead screwdriver. poke one end in, open up the other side, then poke that in, and basically because you've got copper up against the stainless steel rail, it's a good way of.
Yeah, I've done that on some of the connections that have been tough to fix. I mean, I gave up trying to solder it a long time ago.
And there's a new product out there specifically made for that. It's a very thin pieces of metal. I've forgotten what it's called, but it's being marketed specifically for this purpose of sticking it.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, there are little beryllium copper, like little beryllium copper clips that you can push in there.
Yeah.
Rarer than self make.
So if your copper tape cracks and splits, do you just lay a piece right over that section, or how did you have to fix it?
That's why you
need to solder.
Conductive adhesive. You either solder it or you get the stuff with conductive adhesive, so you don't have to worry about that. You still want to burnish it, but if
I don't believe there is conductive adhesive.
there is.
I think it's not what the copper tape is made for.
No, but you can get it. I mean, the tape is made for, it's not made for slot car tracks even, it's made for all kinds of electric, repairs.
For stained glass windows.
And windows too, yeah. But yeah, I've never had any, but people have sold copper tape with conductive adhesive.
It's tricky because people overlap it and then they use a knife or a nail to punch little holes in it. And after a while, the car is running over it, that'll flatten it out. And then you don't have a contact again.
Yeah.
And you can't see it. So that's why I solder everything.
I've done 3 rally tracks with the adhesive copper tape. And as long as you overlap the joints by probably 2 to 3 inches, it's fine. The adhesive is relatively conductive, but the more contact patch you have, the better. But it does actually work.
Okay.
Now, did you have to do it to the tape to was your tape sold as having conductive adhesive, or did you do little pin pricks or what?
Definitely sold as having conductive adhesive.
Okay. Now, Ray asked about the tiny little metal tabs that you insert at each joint. Does anybody here have actually tried the little metal tabs, or just the wire like John was talking about?
I've done the wire quite a bit. I do that. I've done that quite a bit.
When I tried that on my sport track, and I think I used, geez, it had to have been like 30 gauge. It was like jewelry copper wire. It was super, super fine.
Sure.
And I did that in a couple spots. And with sport, you don't have the slot liner. You've just got rail, and then you've got plastic track. So with a sport, you got to put it on the other side of the rail, between the rail and the track. And what that ended up doing is, even with that super fine wire, it pushed the rail in just a teeny little bit. And having that on both sides, the slot is already not very wide. And so I had guides getting stuck where I had done it. So I ditched that idea.
Okay.
But that probably won't be so bad on Carrera, because they've got a much wider slot, and they've got the slot liner that you could put it between.
Yep.
So on those joints that you've done that to, have you ever noticed any problems?
No, they're fine. I mean, it's just, check it with a voltmeter now and then. I'll feel a section going slower, and we'll just check it with the voltmeter. And if it's bad, first we'll try just to push them a little bit. And if that doesn't work, we slip a little bit of wire into that black plastic edge against the track.
Go ahead and do that.
We've stuck in wire. We've stuck in a braid. Take a little piece of thin braid, and just, it doesn't matter what you push in there. If it, it works fine.
Do that around the whole track, or just when you notice problems? Just
when we find a bad one. Now and then I'll take out the voltmeter and go check a bunch of them for, just go down the row and check them, one at a time, just to see how it's holding up. But I mean, the 6 power caps help a lot.
One of our guys built a slot car. He put a little digital readout in it, and it reads the voltage, and he pushes it by hand around the track, and he gets the voltage. Yeah.
There's actually, you can buy the little voltage things on eBay for like 10 for $5 or something like that. And there's actually a 3D printed housing for it with a guide, as part of the print. And so all you got to do is run the lead wires out the little holes, and make sure they touch the rails, and then you just stick it on the rail, stick it in the slot, and read the voltage.
Huh. Okay.
Voltage doesn't really tell you a whole lot. I mean, if you've got continuity, then you should have the same voltage. Pretty much.
I measure resistance is what I work with versus the voltage.
If you want to use voltage, you've got to have a load.
Yep. So I do resistance at the joints. That's how I check them. Okay.
I'll just think doing the little the wire thingy for your whole track before you do tape.
Yeah. Just as problems appear, you know. Well, we notice them right away. I mean, you get so used to your track.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you just notice them.
I think it's funny when somebody's I'm racing with these guys who've been doing it for 20 some years, and I'm like, yeah, you got power loss in here. He's like, really? And I'm like, you don't feel it? How do you not feel that? It's like, that's clearly like a volt less power once I get in there. How do you not feel that?
Yep, I agree.
It might just be familiarity breeding contempt on their part.
Or they just don't care that much. They're just like, yeah, car goes around. I'm fine. And since we basically run, round robin, everybody has to deal with that lane. It's not like, even if that lane is slower or whatever, like by tenths or seconds even, everybody's going to be in that lane. So everybody's going to have to deal with that lack of power. So
it sounds like any other track owner who says, oh, you want improvements? You do them.
Yeah, you fix it. Or replace it with wood.
I had one of those encounters with Alan Smith one time, where I was trying to. He was issuing cars for a race, and I wanted to put the rear tires on a tire grinder and grind them around because the car was hopping all over the place. No, you can't do that. So why not? Well, it's the same for everybody. I said, yeah, but if you let everybody through the tires, it's still the same for everybody, and everybody enjoys it a lot more. But knowing Alan, I didn't get too far.
Yes, he's very strict with the rules.
Well, that sounds more like kneecapping than handicapping.
Yeah. Oh, well, it worked out eventually. Because eventually what happened was everybody complained so much that he took all the tires from everybody, all 8 teams or whatever it was, and he put every pair of tires on his machine, and he did all the work. Instead of just letting us do the work, he did all the work. But, yeah, that's the control freak part of Alan.
I mean, he also knows what people are.
I visited.
Go ahead, Alan.
I visited a track once in England where they took an interesting brute force approach to this problem of continuity in rails. It was a routed track, and they had routed 3 inches wide, and the conductors were 1/8 inch by 1/4 inch steel glued vertically inside to both sides of the groove. So they had a very smooth 1/8 inch groove, and they had very, very solid conductors.
Well, all the tracks in South Africa, when I was racing there, pretty much all of our tracks, the slot was formed by, we had 1/4 inch square brass that was inlaid into the track. So we had, again, as Alan was saying, you've got a 1/4 inch deep slot that has this beautiful smooth side to it, both sides, and then 1/4 inch wide brass across the top, and absolutely no power drop whatsoever anywhere. The only issue, of course, is how long it takes to lay that, because you have to bend it through a bending machine to get it in, because you can't bend it by hand at that point. So you have to roll it through the rollers to bend each one. So roll it through the roller, check that it fits the radius, put it in, drill through it with a countersunk screw. And so, in a 106-foot track or whatever our track was, I think we had, like 5,000 screws or something. I don't remember now. It was an enormous number.
You remember years ago, Dennis, you could buy.
Dude, I can't remember yesterday, let alone years ago.
Well,
Okay.
you could buy, it was in all the car model magazines, you could buy rolls of plastic with a slot molded in and two reliefs to put, so it was a continuous, and it came in colors, so you could buy red for red lane and whatever. So you need, and I can't remember the dimensions, it'd say 5/8, 6/8 of an inch wide slot, and you just inserted this single piece of plastic and bent it all around and then taped it. And
I remember seeing that. Yeah, I don't know that I ever saw a track that had it, but I remember seeing that.
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've noticed that we've got someone new, Weltmeister.
Weltmeister.
Hello.
My name is Philip, and I have been lurking.
Well, welcome. Please introduce yourself, please.
I'm down in North Carolina. I am getting back into the hobby, and I'm in the process of building a track, which is behind me. And it's a variation of Suzuka that appeared, I think, in a magazine in 1964, 65.
Yeah, actually, I've been following you online. You have to paint it twice, you were saying?
Yeah, I didn't like it, so I sanded it all down and restarted again. But I was trying to get that speckled effect that Dave had done on his track. Second time, happy with it, so we're going with that. And by not coincidence, but oddly enough, about 15 years ago, when I was living in Indonesia, came across a blog on Dave's first PDR, and shamelessly replicated and was in contact with him as when my boys were little. So still,
I'm starting to get worried that I get blamed for a lot of things I had nothing to do with, I swear. Nor any divorces, in case you want to know.
Well, welcome to the support group. Let us know where we have to send your chip.
Okay.
Well, I look forward to seeing more progress on your track.
It's been a great discussion. I am hesitant to begin the wiring and the taping, but I do have. I don't know if I bought it from you, Greg, or from Luff. I bought it some years ago, but the taping tool.
Probably Luff. I've only been doing it for a couple of years now.
Okay.
But I can always replace that if anything breaks.
You know, TrackMate makes a little plate that powers up the track. It has 3 posts for alligator clips. It has a reversing switch.
Okay.
And on the back, it has little.
I got a setup from Slot Car Corner.
Yeah. And there's no soldering involved. It's all little screw posts and screws, and there's only 4 wires to the track.
Well,
2 to the track. And
already committed to soldering, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Hopefully the house will remain standing.
So this is the second track you've built then?
Yeah, the first one was plastic, and then this one's routed and somewhat bigger, 3 lanes.
I did have a question on your decision to. I don't want to say that I'm questioning your decision so much as I want to understand your decision to have the straightaway going on top. I'm guessing it's because the Suzuka main straight is on top.
Yeah. And the original design was configured this way, although there is a club in Austin and they do it the other way. And I think to avoid shunts, that would be the way to go. But I'm a stickler sometimes for historical accuracy, maybe too much.
I figured that's what it was. The main reason for me for putting the straight under the wiggly bits is because you don't actually have to see the car the whole time. You know, yeah. I think the one in Austin you're talking about, it's a fairly smooth but not perfectly straight.
Yeah, it's like a bit of a dog leg, if you will.
Yeah. So you could, because I've driven on plenty of tracks where people have done the bridge as a straight thing, and then they've got curves under that, and you lose your car. You don't know where your braking point is or where your car is, so you're like just kind of feathering it until it comes back into view. And I've always not liked that very much. So
I'm going to ask why I'm going with AC power as opposed to DC.
Oh, you're doing AC. That's cool.
Yeah. Which caused quite a stir on the forum when I announced that.
Why?
Sorry again.
Yes, I think
not sorry.
Partially your fault as well.
Well, you could toss some flippers in there and do AC2 car.
Yeah, that's originally where I came across the idea, but was a little daunted at venturing that far. Maybe the next track. And my wife did mention a second track, which floored me. So when you build your next one, so I'll take that opening.
So you're running AC power, but just 2 lanes?
3 lanes.
3 lanes, okay. And
Eventually.
then how does one change lane, or don't you?
At this point, no. There's no lane changing.
All right. So
Dennis, have you looked into AC2 car very much, Dennis?
Yes, I built a little Gymkhana track a little while back that runs both ways. In fact, I think the very first time I was on the call, or the second time I showed you guys that little parking lot track that I built.
Yeah.
And that has AC2 car. Although there I was using just 1 lane, and I needed to control 2 cars in 1 lane. So I didn't have any flippers or lane changes in it.
Okay. And you could switch back and forth between AC and DC, right?
Yeah, I just unplug one power supply, plug in the other power supply, and away I go. And then of course you can only run, on my track, you can only run 1 car.
Yeah, I remember.
That's the way this will be. So half rectified?
Yeah, it's half rectified.
And the main reason you're going with AC is that more kind of fluid control, not the
more realistic. And apparently and from what I've heard from YouTube videos, they sound pretty cool as well.
Yeah, they do. They just have no brakes.
Yes. Well,
it's a big chi jet.
Just run some SDX cars. Those things break like nobody's business.
Yeah, that would help. But yeah, there's no dynamic braking on it because of the diodes in the cars. And you got to remember that you need to put diodes in the cars, and therefore cars are specific to a particular controller.
Yeah, if you're running the 2 car, that's absolutely true. The way I did it with the PDR for years was I put the diode inside the wiring for the track only, because I was doing single car per lane as well with no crossovers. Mm-hmm. And that worked out splendidly. There was a huge argument, and I work for a utility. I've been in the electric business for 20-something years, but I'm not an electrician. So I won't get into any more baited arguments over rectified, non-rectified, or anything around it. But I will tell you, everybody that drove the track said, holy crap, this is totally different. The linear pole, as I called it, was different, even though you'd be doing the same speed at the end of the straight. How you got there was different. And for a tight track like my last rendition of PDR, it was impossible, literally impossible on low voltage to drive the car cleanly with DC power. I just couldn't do it. My jokes about my driving aside, trust me, on your own track, you know yourself better than anybody. And it was very difficult to do. The minute I switched to AC, I could suddenly creep the cars a lot different, negotiate the tight spots. And again, with very minimal training, I was able to take guys who had never seen the track before from a Denver club, come down to run the TA or the Can-Am Proxy. Within about 2 laps, they're like, piece of cake, got this. And it was some of the cleanest racing you've ever seen, and they loved it. So they were actually disappointed when I built the RIR version of the PDR and went back to DC. So I had even lane spacing, no requirements for tight corners, and I put 1 power lane or power pack per track, only because I couldn't find 3 or 2 more Lionel transformers easily or cheaply. And so I was able to start running ghost cars with those, with single Lionel powering it before, though. They loved the track. So it's always interesting to just, again, get somebody else's perspective, and what works for me may not work for you, but that's what makes us all, unique, right?
Yep. I didn't use the Lionel. The Lionel power packs are nice because you have the built-in voltage adjustment.
Yep.
But if you can't get that, I bought like a 20 volt AC 50 VA transformer, and then I just tuned the voltage that I needed on the track by the number of diodes that I put in each feed, and dropped the voltage by a couple of, by 0.7 of a volt per diode, and I very quickly, I think there's 3 diodes in each one on my track, which is a very short track, so I had to drop the voltage quite a bit to make it all drivable, but it's not a difficult thing to do.
No.
Says you.
I have a question about.
Come on.
What you got, Alan?
I can see how you could use AC power for the electronics type. I had to, but I'm wondering if that is distinctly different from which should in some respects mimic AC power.
I didn't. Kind of bugged out on me a little bit. I don't know if anybody else heard the whole question.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead and turn off. I think you got a bandwidth issue, Alan. Go ahead and just turn off your video and then try just audio.
Okay, let me. A lot of freezing and interruption. I think Verizon is doing it. Better.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Again.
The question I have, a comparison C power, and I can see how that works, to the use of a pulse width modulation control could be seen as sort of a quasi-AC system.
I think what we have is what we need. And he was asking for a comparison between AC or AC2 car and that of DC, but controlled by a pulse width modulation controller. And if that is a valid comparison, or how do they compare?
So that was brought up before, and I couldn't speak to that. Maybe Dennis can, since he's played with it with a different power pack than what I was dealing with. That is an argument that was made multiple times. Again, I'm not an electronics expert, so I can't speak to it. I can just tell you that what I had worked. I mean, honestly, that's just the bottom line.
I think that with half-wave rectified AC, you're working with a voltage that starts at 0 and ramps up to whatever maximum it's going to ramp up to, and then drops back to 0, and then is dormant for half a cycle, and then does the same thing again. Mm. So what happens with the pulse width modulation is the ramp up on the pulse width is much, much faster than that half wave would be, so that you are effectively getting the full voltage applied to the motor for a period of time, and then a 0, and then a full voltage, and then a 0. And so I think that the characteristics of driving that would be that you would get a lot more torque out of the motor using a pulse width modulation than you would using a half-wave rectification at the low end of the speed, and it may not be as easy. What we found is that there are pulse width modulated controllers that are out there right now. There are lots of True Speed in the UK. All of his controllers are PWM, and but they operate at a much higher frequency than the 60 hertz that we would use on an AC2 car or on an AC circuit. So, Alan, I think that while you're probably correct in some ways, I think that the practical effect is going to be that the pulse width modulation will make the car less easy to drive than it would be on the half-wave rectified AC.
Yeah, I can see that point. Point of fact, the True Speed controller is the one that I use. And I was thinking about that. Okay, I just curious about that about that point.
And I use a slotted controller, which I believe are also PWM controllers. I've never raced AC. I certainly would like to give that a try at some point. I can't make a comparison, but knowing how to work my slotted controller, I've never had any problems getting any car to go the way that I want it to go, you know, with fiddling the knobs the right way without having to reduce voltage or anything like that. Not that like I'm the man or anything like that, but I hesitate to just say, okay, well, AC just makes everything easier. I'd like to try it at some point so I can.
Well, again, it's not for everybody. I did it both with Parma 45s as well as PM's Silver Series controllers. It worked out really well with both. Never played with any adjustable. Actually, if you hand me a controller today with knobs on it, I look at it like, what is this? I don't know what to do. I still don't have any adjustables. I've raced them in a few places and they're interesting, but I typically, if they hand them to me a certain way, I really don't mess with it, which could also lead to why I suck driving. But the AC thing, again, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning when I came to the decision to actually finally do it, because I ran the first, couple of evenings with the PDR in, finished state with no scenery. And I just found I couldn't drive the cars. I mean, worse than my normal job. I literally could not keep the cars because that track had such diabolical corners in a couple of places. It was impossible for me to drive them cleanly. I found that by the time I would get around to the straight, I was pretty PO'd, to be honest, and thought I'd made a huge mistake with the track's design. So after fiddling around with it for a bit, switched it over to AC as a temp. I literally had, alligator clips holding the diode in line with the controller just to try one lane, and suddenly could drive the track. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Flipped it back. Nope, still can't drive it on DC. Flipped it back to AC. Yep, I can drive it. This is totally bizarre. I really just did not expect that. Had somebody come over that was local, thought I was crazy. He came over and said the same thing. Oh my God, this is so much different. And so, the guys, after I changed in the club out of Denver, actually said, man, we really miss and wish you'd have kept it, honestly, because we liked it so much. But PDR as it sits now and the RII configuration is just a different driving track, different set of circumstances, and it works out okay. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. And I was very thankful I hooked up with Jimmy and the guys in Michigan to find out about AC2 car. And my initial intent, and that's where I think Philip and I first got hooked up years ago, was I have the flippers because the original version of the PDR I routed actually had pit lanes that were functional. I ended up never finishing the wiring on that. I honestly, at this point, can't even really remember why. And at some point said, nah, I'm not going to do it. And I rerouted that section. I still have all the flippers and the router template and everything sitting in a baggie here. So Philip, if you need them, let me know. I might just send them to you. They're beautiful aluminum, and I paid, I don't even remember what, for the video and all the pieces, parts. I think it may have been a guy out of Canada. Luckily, may have been somebody from your area, or maybe it was out of the Michigan, that whole AC2 car crowd that did it. I can't remember now where I got it. It's been so long.
Yeah. I'm wondering if there's a way that you could basically have your cake and eat it too. Thinking of driving the track with what amounts to a high-powered signal generator, generating a sawtooth wave, so you could actually have a quasi-AC wave without using diodes. The brakes as well.
Okay, that's already Greek at that point to me. So yeah, sure. I have no idea.
Just a thought.
Me neither. Sorry. But Philip, if you're running 3 lanes and you're running AC, so you'll have diodes supplying the track, but then you don't need any diodes in the cars, right?
Correct. Yeah, it'll be the same as Dave's old system.
All right, so they're all running on one half of the wave.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Had never
Do,
thought
do,
about
do you have a target date in mind for your completion, or is it just?
Yes, it's every week, but it seems to be rolling. I don't know. We'll see if I can get onto it again this weekend.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of marital support, so embrace that with all your heart.
Absolutely.
You should milk that for all it's worth. It won't last forever.
It's been 27 years. We just celebrated.
Awesome. In that case, she's a keeper.
Yeah, and plus it's too financially trepidatious for anyone to part right now.
Oh, come on. Let's be honest. Who wants to date in today's day and age? Let's be honest. We're all old guys.
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that, especially when they see the toy cars.
Shh, we don't talk about that's first rule of Date Club. We don't talk about toy cars.
My slot car collection.
I got my wife to actually admit that a slot car was cool a short while. I know, unbelievable.
Well, if I can offer anything, I would really strongly recommend that you be referred to as a hobbyist.
Now, but tell us truthfully, when you brought her and showed her the car, did she go cool or did she go cool?
No, she went. That's cool.
Okay, I'll give that.
You want to see it?
Did you record that for later in posterity?
You want to see it?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Remember I showed you this little Matchbox Hot Wheels car?
Yeah.
Yeah. Meet its big brother.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
The slot car version.
Hey, very cool.
I still have that Matchbox. I am so jealous.
Yeah. But the glazing was done. The glazing was actually, there's the template for the glazing. So it's only 2 folds to make the glass. So that was quite straightforward. Would you like the wheels?
Yeah.
That is lovely.
Well,
Richard, have you taken it around the track yet?
No, I haven't. There's no motor in it. I literally, the chassis came off my 3D printer about 30 minutes ago.
I thought I saw you messing with something.
The wheels are 3D printed, and with the inserts, silver. I printed the wheels black, so they made the tires look bigger. But actually, I don't know whether you can see the back clearly enough. But I've actually got 2 holes either side to put 2mm grub screws. So although they're plastic wheels, they've actually got you can put a 5mm long 2mm grub screw in to secure it to the axle. There's enough material there for it to grip to without stripping the thread.
For those of you on this side of the Atlantic, a grub screw is a set screw. Here.
Set screw, sorry. Set screw.
Now, just in case you thought it
brilliant.
Just in case you thought that a grub screw was something you did at lunchtime.
The drive
actually, as with everything in the UK, it relates to gardening.
Yeah. The driver is 3D printed as well, using I think it's Major Ronnie of Slot Forum posted some instructions on how to do your own figure in DAS. So I downloaded that and fiddled around with it for a couple of hours and came up with a driver figure.
Now, did you resize him, Richard? Because you were saying you were looking at resizing him.
Yeah, I resized him in Cura because he was going to be about 23 foot tall by scale standards, so I had to make him a bit smaller.
That's only about 2 rolls of filament, depending on your infill.
So yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be handling very similar to the milk floats. So the milk floats have got something else to at least it can tow them home when their batteries run out.
I was going to say that's the next step to see if it'll actually tow something.
Well, yeah, maybe it could tow this. But they're a very similar weight, so and very similar wheelbase. I had to lengthen the milk float chassis by 4mm for the tow truck. But in terms of weight, they're very similar. So I'm hoping they'll be quite evenly matched on my track. So I've just got to put a motor in and chip it.
Well, would you maybe think about putting a bit of weight in the nose so it doesn't tip up then?
Well, what?
Oh, the tow truck, so it can actually tow so it doesn't tip.
Oh, right. No, I don't know about that. I'd need to do different because the arms don't articulate and the hooks are too high up to hook into anything.
All right. So I just want to point out that you need to realize that in 2020, we're looking at something that was made 30 some odd years ago by Matchbox that somebody has managed to digitize, put into a printer, paint it, turn it into almost a running slot car. And here we are sitting around talking about it on iPads and iPhones and computers.
Yeah.
Is anybody else freaked out, or is it just me?
Listen, in 20 years, they'll be,
you.
in 20 years, they'll be doing it with our DNA. Not to worry. Don't worry.
1972, it says on the maker's plate on the bottom.
There you go. I was off a few years, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's so what would be 48 years ago. Yeah, it's taken somebody 48 years to make a bigger one.
Well, it looks fabulous.
Are you gonna be sharing?
I'm going to put a motor in it and ship it tomorrow and see if I can race it around my track.
Well, I took screenshots of that because that's going to my kids. They got to see this.
Well, I'll post a build thread on Slot
Ah, fabulous.
And you'll be sharing those files?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Oh.
Tell you what, it takes a blinking long time to print, I tell you. There's probably about 12 to 15 hours worth of printing time in there.
But if you're not gonna, I mean, unless you're gonna sell kits, are you gonna sell kits? If you're not gonna sell kits,
I might do. I might put it on. I might put it on Thingiverse and just encourage people to make a donation or something.
there you go. Turn on your tipping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, something has to pay for the PIMS, right?
Yeah.
The pins.
That looks absolutely awesome. That looks really good.
Yeah.
That does look fantastic. I look forward to the build thread with nice pictures.
Yeah.
All right, coming up on 2 hours. Anything else anybody want to talk about for the next 10 minutes before I hit the stop button?
I want to know what that fender is behind Phil there.
Oh, that is a Fender from an Elva Mark III that crashed in the 1958 Sebring endurance race.
Now, did you drive, or did you know the person who did drive it?
Oh, it crashed in 1958. I wasn't around then.
Okay.
It's a gentleman racer by the name of Doc Wiley. I think Dennis said he was from South Africa. So Wiley was from South Africa. It's written on the side of the fender. This was an aluminum bodied car, or aluminium. And then there is the Mark VII, also same driver owner, that's up above the door there as well. That's fiberglass and a bit.
Is that a legit BDRC emblem there?
The what?
The emblem on the on the one behind you. Looks like
Yes.
a legit BDRC.
Yeah, I had to research that. So he was a member of the British
Drivers Racing Club. Yes,
but also then the U.S. Road Racers Club, and so you have to be voted in to the latter.
Wow. So he, with that kind of driving skill, he must have had a lot of money.
He was a petroleum chemical engineer with Gulf, executive, and his wife was a racer as well. And then the plate.
Yeah, actually, my uncle and I worked for Gulf as an undergrad. My uncle was a chemical engineer for Gulf Canada.
Okay. Well, he
And
was based out of Pittsburgh.
Okay. They might even actually know each other. What broke my heart was my uncle used to get all these things for promotional items that he threw away, and I found out that they were actually from some guy named McLaren.
Ooh.
Yeah, we still don't talk.
Yeah, it's this stuff eventually it found its way, I guess, after he died. Somebody found a whole collection of memorabilia in a pawn shop.
Oh.
And I just something popped. I guess the plate underneath the fender. It's a class win from the inaugural race, 1957 at Virginia International Raceway, which is an hour north of me. Carroll Shelby won the main race in a Maserati. But this stuff, it just started to show up on eBay. So I started to bid on it and drove up to Blacksburg, Virginia, and to buy the fender. He gave me the other fender and then a bunch of photographs, which you can see, which is the Mark VII, which is over by the door there. It was a rather cool series of finds.
And the steering wheel as well?
Steering wheel is off a Porsche. It's a prototypo from the 60s before they figured out that maybe having wood inside a cockpit wasn't a great idea.
No, that's okay. You've got leather gloves.
I think it was more the splintering.
Yeah. That's how leather wrapping started, because they wanted to stop the splintering of the wood. If you look at any old driver, in fact, when I went to racing school, I was always taught thumbs up. That you never wrap your thumbs in a steering wheel, especially in an open wheel car, because if you touch, it literally will shear your thumbs off.
And then the albums are all recordings, racing recordings, car recordings from the 50s, 60s, I guess up until the 70s. I've got
those I recognize. I collect those too.
Yeah, Riverside. They just did a whole series.
Yeah.
Have you got the Rusket record as well? Oh, sorry, Grant. I was just going to ask.
Sorry, John. Go ahead.
The Rusket record.
I don't have that. What is that?
Oh, well, Rusket, who was a slot car manufacturer in the 60s, also did a thing, I think it's Sebring, when they were sponsoring a Porsche 906, I think.
And they made an album?
Yep. Yeah, you can actually, it was on YouTube for a while. I don't know if it still is.
Yeah, Riverside did a whole series of recordings over the years from Sebring. I mean, I would say that at least half of what I have are recordings from Sebring, from the 50s, a lot of the 50s and 60s.
Now, did you drive as well, or? Were you a driver as well, or?
No, I have a couple old cars, so I like driving those, and I just like that era, sort of 50s and 60s. Cars were starting to get a bit more powerful, but
that's when sex was safe and racing was dangerous.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I love that fender. That's awesome.
Yeah, so do I. It's a number of current Elva owners who have tried to wrest it from me.
Very cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to sort of interject, but that's just too cool not to talk about.
That is pretty cool. Jeremy has joined us. Hey, Jeremy. Are you the bibster?
Oh, he's muted.
Am I what?
The bibster.
No.
Nope,
Born
not.
again racer.
Guess not. That's okay. Where are you from, Jeremy?
England, south coast of England. I was here about 10 meetings ago once. Just born again racer on Slot Racer Online.
Okay.
Just finished my quiz, so I can come on here now.
I'm glad you could join us for the last few minutes.
Yeah. Just sit quietly in the corner.
That's fine. Well, we've only got a few minutes left. Anybody got any last minute questions or show and tell topics?
I got something to show. You remember a couple of meetings back, we talked about 3D printing bodies, and we talked about those Area 71 bodies that are printed in that fancy way that they have, where they don't need supports and so on. And I seem to remember I showed the Corvette C8 body that I just got. Well, it's done.
Oh,
that's a beauty.
I can't even tell that was printed. That looks fantastic.
It's come out really well. It took quite a lot of sanding, filling and sanding to get that rough surface out of it. But if you see you can see the detail inside in the cockpit, right? And the whole interior, the driver, the dash system with all of the little screens and things, the roll cage, everything is printed in single piece. And if you won't see it now, but at least I don't think you can. When I was painting it, I realized that behind the steering wheel, the actual shifter pedals are molded separately into the steering column as well. So the only thing that you have to stick on is the driver's head, which comes as a separate molding. But yeah, so that's how it came out. I did it in the number 4, the presentation livery. so that it didn't have a lot of extra decals and things to make. And basically, I painted it silver, and all of the yellow is adhesive tape that I put on afterwards, because it made it a whole lot easier than masking and spraying.
Have you run it? How does it run?
It runs great. This is their chassis that comes with the car, and then it has a scale auto guide, and it has a slotted Sidewinder pod with a slotted 29K motor, and 1172 and 22 rubber tires at the back with my foam filling inside them. They're all glued and trued, and it runs really, really well.
That's really, really nice. Great
Yeah, it's come out really well. I'm very happy with it, especially on this kind of camera that doesn't show you all the defects.
That's why we all look good.
Is the glass a casting or is it vac formed?
The glass is vac formed, and it's not the greatest vac forming in the world, but it actually fits pretty well, and it was relatively easy to cut it to size. But it does have little dimples in it from, it's not been vac formed on molds that are that good, and obviously their machine is fairly low vacuum. I have a friend here in Southern California by the name of Victor Ferguson, who has a little business that he calls True Scale Products, and he can vac form way better than that. So maybe at some stage I'll get him to do some vac forms for me. But yeah, it's good enough for now.
So who makes that car? Can you buy it as a kit, as a full kit?
Oh, you muted yourself, Dennis.
I'm sorry, you buy it from Area 71 in Italy, and it comes as a body with all the body, interior, and chassis. And then you have to add all the mechanicals to it and paint it.
Thank you.
And some slot retailers sell their products.
They may do, yeah. I haven't found one here though. I know Alan Smith had at 132 Slot Car had a couple, but those were just the 1/24th scale Formula One bodies that fit onto those Scale Auto Classe 1 chassis. But maybe somebody else does. I've just always ordered them direct from Area 71. You find them on Facebook. They're not cheap. It's like 69 euros and then another 25 euros or so to mail it to the US. They're not that cheap, but it's a car you can't get anywhere else right now. And they have a very large range of GT3 and GTD and whatever you want to call them. And so if you're into that kind of car, which I am, it's a way of getting stuff that you can't get anywhere else.
So you really are actually the first on your block to have one of those.
No.
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that going to be your car for next year?
No. No, for the next GT3 Proxy, I've got another Area 71 body, which is a Lamborghini Huracan.
Okay.
And I'm going to build a brass chassis for that.
Well, we've come up on our 2 hours. The people who want to stick around and continue to chat off recording will do so. And everybody else, I encourage you to come and join us live next time and ask your questions and share your things and continue chatting for as long as you feel like it. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and hit the stop button. And if you want to wave bye, now's the time to wave bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm going to leave.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.